Members of the House are discussing about President Donald Trump crypto profits in meme coin, and this discussion looks as if President Donald Trump is the one manipulating the increase and decrease of this coin. And according to a member in the House, he says that Donald Trump always wins. That is, President Donald Trump is always at game. Many are losing, while some are also winning. So this attracts a lot of attention. But before we proceed, watch this.
Now, if there is one picture you take away from this forum, this should be it. This is the history of the Trump meme coin. You could make it a case history in business schools. Pump and dump, front running, bait and switch, classic, fraud. That's when it began, at the beginning of the Trump administration, when it was hyped by the President of the United States, and then dropped precipitously. The President had a gala to try to hype it back. It worked a little bit for a little while, and then the slide continued to today, when it's worth a pitiful, pathetic fraction of its initial amount. Trump's profits had victims. Corruption has costs. And the consequences to these individuals were lost retirement accounts, sacrificed savings, houses in foreclosure, losses that changed their lives. $3.8 billion. That's right, $3.8 billion, so that he could profit from the meme coin alone, $636 million. These numbers are so gargantuan that they're almost meaningless to the average American. $1.4 billion is what his total profits were from crypto, and 636 million of it as a result of the pump and dump scheme on his meme coin. His total income last year, $2 billion. It's beyond words for most Americans, beyond comprehension. But it was no accident. And it certainly was no great vision of economic contribution. It was simply self-enrichment. It had victims. It had costs for everyday Americans. President Trump, who famously once called Bitcoin a scam, has not only used it to enrich himself, he's sold out the American people, he's enriched his family, his sons, his insider friends, his campaign donors, and some of them, for example, Steve Witkoff, is also in the national news and in positions of responsibility. Days before his second inauguration, one UAE company paid $500 million for a 49% stake in his other firm, World Liberty Financial. And soon after, another UAE company, all of them linked to the ruling family and the major wealth fund, purchased $2 billion of its so-called stablecoin. As a result of all this personal success, the president is now fiercely committed to protecting the crypto industry. This kind of exploitation took advantage of weaknesses in the current law. The president is taking a strong stand against reforms that would eliminate the weaknesses and loopholes that he exploited and others are doing right now to perpetrate the same kind of fraud on the same kind of innocent victims across the United States. Many of his friends and family, high-level officials in his administration, and others he is protecting are profiting while the rest of America is less stable and less secure than we were before. The president has shaped his administration in his own image. Bo Hines, who is a former official in the White House, went to work for an organization called Tether, linked to Howard Lutnick, Secretary of Commerce, and involved in these crypto ventures. Just two examples that illustrate and prove the point that we are making here, that there needs to be fundamental, far-reaching, penetrating reform not the Clarity Act. President Trump's personal grift is resonating across the world. Scams and frauds are growing, driven in large part by the ease of laundering stolen funds through cryptocurrency. We need to make sure that any regulations can be vigorously enforced. The Clarity Act, for example, takes away authority of state attorneys general. Having been one, I know personally, and we're seeing right now how attorneys general are filling the breach that's left by a Department of Justice that has become Trump's personal law firm. The Clarity Act would depend on the Department of Justice to do enforcement, which would make protections essentially dead letter. It would expose the financial future of millions of Americans to unacceptable volatility and risk, while giving crypto billionaires a free pass to the basic consumer protections that banks and other financial institutions are required to follow. There's a model here. Banks, security companies, they're required by law to follow certain safeguards and guardrails. Right now, the effort by the crypto industry is to get a free pass. Earlier today, we received written testimony from New York Attorney General Letitia James, and she writes, quote, "Clarity seeks to interfere with and preempt states' investor protection laws as well as dilute our ability to prosecute fraud. This is a mistake. Preemption, no enforcement, smokescreen, guardrails." And I'm unable to enter this testimony into the congressional record at this time, but I'm going to post it on our website. I want to thank Attorney General James for her submission, and I want to thank all the witnesses who are here today, my colleagues who are going to be joining us later today. Senator Durbin is here now, and I want to turn it over now to my partner in this effort, Senator Van Hollen.
Let me start by thanking Senator Blumenthal for his focus on shining a light on this crypto corruption that's coming out of the White House. And they want to make sure that crypto corruption infects the entire country. And we have an obligation to make sure that doesn't happen. So thank you, Richard, for all of your efforts. I see we've been joined by Senator Durbin. I want to thank him as well for all he's doing on the Judiciary Committee and other forums. And thank all of you very much for being here. We look forward to the testimony. We know this is the most corrupt administration in American history. What I think not all Americans appreciate is that the crypto corruption is the lion's share of the corruption coming out of the Trump White House. As Senator Blumenthal said, President Trump has increased his net worth by $2.2 billion last year alone. $2.2 billion while Americans are struggling to make ends meet. And more than half of that, $1.4 billion of those profits come from crypto scams. Senator Blumenthal mentioned one of the major ones, which was this Trump meme coin. That individual we heard who got scammed was one of almost 1 million Americans who were taken advantage of by Donald Trump. In fact, about 1 million Americans lost $3.8 billion of their money to the Trump meme coin scam. And as Senator Blumenthal showed, the value of that meme coin kept going down and down. But the way President Trump makes his money is every trade. It can go up, it can go down, but he's like the house. 'Cause, he makes money whether people are winning or losing. And as we see, most people are losing while he's winning. Senator Blumenthal also mentioned that big party President Trump had at one of his local, estates. That was to pump the value because what it was a party for people who were the biggest investors in that time in his Trump meme coin. And a lot of people who bought it were foreign investors who simply wanted the opportunity to rub elbows with the President of the United States, literally selling the Oval Office and access to the President of the United States for his own personal profit. It's obscene and outrageous. The other big scam, as Senator Blumenthal mentioned, was the World Liberty financial scam. So as it turns out, right, the Sheikh Tahnoon's company, MGX, they essentially gave President Trump $500 million before he was even sworn in to buy a share of World Liberty Financial. And then when the president was going to the UAE, United Arab Emirates, he made clear that he was going to reduce the restrictions that the United States had placed on the transfer of very high-end chips and AI technology. He was going to lift the restrictions that had been put in place when the UAE royal family, Sheikh Tahnoon, who was the head of MGX, but also the head of G42, which is the company that was going to receive this valuable sensitive technology, they essentially invested $2 billion in World Liberty Financial, the Trump family stable coin. By the way, you probably read just last week that the professional staff at the Department of Commerce warned against transferring these very high-end chips to G42 because of their history of diffusion of sensitive technology to China. So here's the President of the United States pocketing hundreds of millions of dollars in profit by compromising our security. So this is very serious business. He's not just enriching himself, he's doing so at the expense of our security. And so I'm really glad you're all here, because you would think that if we were going to pass a piece of legislation to regulate crypto, we would get at some of these issues. But the opposite is true. The so-called Clarity Act that Republicans have put forward actually would not address this issue. They want to make it look like it would address it, but I offered the amendment in the Banking and Housing Committee on the ethics issue. Every Republican at the time voted against it. And now we see their version of the ethics bill, which actually allows the president to continue this conflict of interest going forward. So it's a scam for the scammers. And on top of that, we also had, as Senator Blumenthal pointed out, a real problem with crypto being the currency of choice for all sorts of illicit transactions. So if you're a criminal enterprise, if you're a terrorist organization, if you're a rogue state like North Korea or Iran, crypto is your currency of choice, and they're actually making our vulnerability there worse, not better, by essentially making it clear that DeFi platforms are not subject to regulation. And then there's the lack of consumer protections. There's creating a whole nother sort of universe of investments, which will lead to regulatory arbitrage. There are lots and lots of issues. So I want to thank all of you for being here. I call this bill, the Clarity Bill, a bottom crawler, because what the crypto industry wants is for this to crawl along the bottom of the Senate, and the Senate floor, until they have the votes and pass it. And so we need to shine a light, as we're doing here today with your help, on what's happening, because the crypto industry right now, as we speak, has spent over $189 million of super PAC and other money in elections around the country for House and Senate to try to support and elect candidates that they believe will advance their interests at what I believe is at the expense of the public interest. So this is a really important moment. Thank you, Senator Blumenthal. I'm pleased to partner with you in this effort at this critical time.
Thank you. Excellent. Thank you, Senator Van Hollen. I don't know whether, Senator Durbin, you'd like to make a couple of remarks.
I want to hear from the panel. I'll just say very briefly, Richard Nixon announced, "I am not a thief." Donald Trump is not wasting his breath or time to even make that assertion. We're living in the most corrupt presidency in the history of the United States. Teapot Dome was a little phrase that meant presidential corruption for decades. Cryptocurrency now means the kind of corruption that's going on today in a much, much different form. When I think of what we are faced with here, I beg my colleagues on the Democratic side of the aisle, don't join in on this. We shouldn't be part of this. We don't need our fingerprints at this crime scene. We should be standing for the kinds of things you're hearing today, ethical standards that take politicians out of the crypto game and really start regulating this industry once and for all. I thank you for this meeting.